Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and I welcome all of you back to another Chris Chan and Cwiki reading. So, here we are, ladies and gentlemen. We are very, very slowly now approaching the end game to all of this, but this is far from the end when we're talking about Chris, so don't worry. Have I got plenty of things in store for you coming up? So, let's continue with Chris and the television. So, I don't even know, I think I must have, screwed up. Okay, so it's not that. Display capture. Okay, display capture might look something like this. There we go. And, oh, there we go. Oh, that's nice. Actually, just... There we go. Okay, so, perfect. I watch too much fucking television. Chris being surprisingly true and honest. And by the way, this is, in case you're wondering what this is that somebody decided they're actually going to draw, Solitude characters based on Family Guy, and to be completely fair, these aren't half bad, actually, for what they are. All right down to the way they designed Chris and are in the kitchen, Meg. Oh, dear. Television is a widely used telecommunication medium for transmitting and receiving moving images. It is a staple in almost all North American homes, as well as many other homes throughout the world. It's also one of the favourite pastimes of our mutual friend Indeed. When not socialising, recycling, playing video games, or ranting about blue arms, Indeed, it's a fairly safe bet Chris is sitting down watching TV, lots and lots of TV. Chris gets most of his information concerning the outside world through the television, among other entertainment media. This leads to blatantly ripping off concepts and characters from whatever he watches. Interpolation of media. Chris is prone to interpreting various forms of media in his own strange way. During his attempt to put on his own ads on the Wikipedia, he claimed the award-winning film Avatar was meant to promote the eradication of homosexuality. I'm not entirely sure where Chris got that from, but it was also rather than the tolerance of other cultures. How he contrived this idea is a complete mystery. Exactly, I don't understand that. Not only does homosexuality not feature in the film in any way, but the message of the film that it's entirely wrong to exterminate anything, his view of homosexuals destroying the future, incidentally, emerged from an episode of South Park called Goobacks, which was a satire of the controversy of illegal immigration. In the episode, a group of rednecks who had lost their jobs to illegal immigrants from the future decided that the best way to get their jobs back was to destroy the future by making everyone gay so there wouldn't be anybody in the future. Why Chris thought this was something that was from Avatar, I'm not entirely sure. Chris, however, took everything at face value, because he's Chris, and interpreted the episode as a scare film on par with Red Dawn. In a similar vein, Chris is convinced Family Guy is anti-gay Republican propaganda, owing to his failure to interpret that the show is parodying Republicans, and that the show's creator, Seth MacFarlane, is famously a supporter of gay rights. Interestingly enough, Chris does not have this same misconception when it comes to live action media. He's explicitly stated that Seinfeld characters aren't real and justified his like of the Saw series by saying that the violence is all made up. Apart from sometimes in Chris's mind, because something of a very strange back and forth Chris has done of this is that Chris, for some reason, Chris is under the impression that sometimes the media is... Well, he claims that at sometimes it's not real, and sometimes he claims that it is. And I don't particularly understand what Chris is absolutely getting when he thinks that some media is real and some isn't. I think the logic comes from the fact that Chris thinks his own characters are real or something like that, or whether or not, and this is possibly the other thought I had while making this, is whether or not it's just the characters Chris likes are dramatized in this fashion, I suppose. As shown above, Chris rarely understands any moral dispensed by media, generally wildly misinterpreting them and then citing them as justification for his ridiculous and bigoted behavior. For example, while attempting to justify his attempt to pretend to be Liquid Chris in an attempt to steal his girlfriend, he claimed that he was wrong, but for the right reasons. This comes from another South Park episode, Best Friends Forever, where, after a satire of the Terry Schiavo controversy, it is stated that Cartman was right, but for the wrong reasons. In context, it meant that his goal of shutting down the vegetative Kenny's life support was the right thing to do for reasons involving the fate of the universe that are too complex to explain here. But his motivation was completely off mark. He only did it because he knew that Kenny's death would cause him to inherit his PSP. Meanwhile, Stan and Kyle were wrong, but for the right reasons, as they wanted to keep Kenny alive in a perpetual vegetative state, even though they should just let him die. I should explain right now that I don't watch South Park, so this is like, I could sort of gather what they're going for, but maybe we should just say this is just the sort of example of the sort of thing Chris follows, because, well, he probably knows way more about South Park and Family Guy than probably I will ever know. Chris seems to have interpreted this as, if you do a bunch of bad things, like pretending to be someone else in order to steal their girlfriend, you are completely justified in doing so if your dishonest actions lead to a positive outcome. This suggests the idea of Chris being in a relationship is in any way beneficial to anyone else except Chris. Like proving that you are the true and honest Christian Weston Chandler and getting laid. The dimensional merge. Taste in TV. Chris is a fan of South Park and almost all of Seth MacFarlane's creations, Family Guy, American Dad, and The Cleveland Show. He bought tons of their episodes via the PlayStation Network for a sizable amount of money. Adult Swim is another big favourite of our autistic hero, and he even entered one of their contests and raged when he didn't win. I mean, Chris even went out of his way to just straight up say he was going to, throw away the cure for autism for a PlayStation 3. I mean, that doesn't even sound the thing that would be like even parodic for the sake of Adult Swim. That sounds like something that somebody would genuinely say. Oh wait, I forgot Chris did say it, so makes sense there. And he even entered he recently got into F is for Family, a Netflix original created by Bill Burr. Anime is another area where Chris's choices are very transparent. Among some of his favourites over the years include Shuffle, essentially a tale of an unlikable guy suddenly being accosted by several obedient and attractive females, Gunslinger Girl, essentially a slightly unnerving bit of a soft eroticism, and Excel Saga. While generally regarded favourable, is chock full of in-jokes and parody things that Chris can't understand but is eager to copy. Certain bizarre choices, however, do stick out. However, Monty Python's Flying Circus has been brought up or referenced several times, along with comedian Red Skelton, and I Love Lucy. The former feature's absurdity probably piqued Chris's interest, while the final two are probably an offshoot of his decrepit parents. Sad but true. Chris is a fan of movie musicals, and that his top three are On the Town, Singing in the Rain, and Meet Me in St. Louis. In the same conversation, he described Mary Poppins, another movie musical, as his favourite film. Chris seems to also have watched a fair bit of Cartoon Network and Nickelodeon in the late 90s and early 2000s, making references to Cousin Skeeter, Ed, Edd and Eddy, and the Powerpuff Girls, among others. Many of these shows have gained significant cult followings, but were made for kids much younger than Chris was at the time. Seeing his other interests, though, it's not that surprising that he was watching shows designed for elementary scholars when he was in high school and college. Chris has also shown an occasional preference for some horror films, including the film adaptation of Silent Hill. Really? The movie version of Silent Hill? Why did he like that? And the Saw... I don't know, I've never watched the Silent Hill films. And the Saw series, which, although rarely mentioned by Chris, could be viewed as an inspiration for the events taking place in Sonichu issue 10, where the Asperpedia 4 were executed via elaborate death traps, well, elaborate by Chris's standards. If this picture is clear, Chris may be using Hulu or Hulu Plus lately to watch all the shows he can't access on Netflix. Chris also hinted that he might be using Disney Plus, which, your tax dollars at work, ladies and gentlemen. If you're more than willing to give money to Chris via his live streams or just through AdSense via his YouTube channel, then that might be the case. Mods Chris uploaded to Mod Nation Races indicate he's a fan of Drawn Together, for obvious reasons. Yeah, does anybody remember Drawn Together? I mean, people may remember Drawn Together as the first ever animated reality show, but unlike Total Drama Island, was conceivably worse for its perpetual usage of gross out and like humor that just sort of was very one-dimensional and rather shallow. There was no sophistication in that show whatsoever. He copied a scene from Beavis and Butthead in an issue of Sonichu. Okay, can you like come up with better ideas? You see, I could do jokes like that too. Netflix. Chris has used Netflix to satisfy his watching needs instantaneously, enabling him to reach a near comatose state of mental saturation. Put in more practical terms, he spent more than 6 hours watching Keeping Up Appearances and South Park in a single day. Twice in terms of averages. Chris watches roughly 3 hours of television a day, at least for the week viewed. I mean, how can you even... I don't even remember the last time I ever, like, even watched television for, like, 3 hours at a stretch. You would have to go somewhere nearly maybe 16 years ago for that sort of thing to happen. Well, for me at any rate. I'm probably not even then. The huge selection and instant watch feature, combined with Chris's need to whack, has led to some interesting choices in film. To date, he has rented Maniac Nurses Find Ecstasy, Story of O, Virgin, and many more titles with sexual names and or posters. Considering Netflix doesn't deal in porn, he's wasting his time. Other than these porno hunts and impulse rentals, Chris is pretty much interested in only two types of programs: adult cartoons, British sitcoms and comedy, displaying a remarkably narrow range of interests. I mean, I could go over the very long list of like British dramas that Chris might have been interested in, from The Syndicate, Happy Valley, The Fall, Spooks, In the Thick of It. Oh, but God, what else? What else as well? Line of Duty. I think just if Chris had ever had the courtesy to even look into any of these, or even those weekly serials that ITV pumped out for the last year and a half. And for those who live in the UK, you may possibly be aware of these sorts of things as well. But there's no shortage, or even Industry, which is it's extraordinarily captivating, confusing at times a little bit, but Industry is definitely a big recommendation. Even though I'm only like 2 episodes into its second series, it's absolutely worth the watch. And then, of course, when it comes to comedies, like we don't make mention of things like Keeping Up Appearances and Monty Python, but let's think about other things like Brass Eye, The Day to Day, Father Ted, The IT Crowd, Black Books. Peep Show, that Mitchell and Webb look, The Armstrong and Miller Show. Are you really trying to suggest that there's like no other comedies Chris has ever thought to check out? Even the first series of Mrs. Brown's Boys are absolutely worth it. I know a lot of people aren't particularly big fans of the Mrs. Brown's Boys. Even the first 3 series is a little bit hit or miss for some people, but I watched it and actually I thought it was really, really funny. I didn't really watch much of it after that, but then it's the same. The only movie that really stands out is his selections in Twilight. Maybe the only thing I could suggest about Twilight is maybe that Chris had the idea to create a fan fiction and then turn it into an offshoot and then into an infamous bestseller, into an equally as infamous film franchise. Netflix has also allowed him easier access to the cartoons of his childhood, like Transformers and Sonic being the most prominent. The apparent binge of Transformers-related television may have been in the inspiration behind Sonichu Issue 9. Beginning in the second half of the 2010s, Netflix also began investing in anime for original content. Of all things, Chris spent a single day in early July 2020 binge-watching Brand New Animal, merely stating on his social media it's a very good anime. Given that it's a flashy, action-packed anime consisting of humanoid animals, overpowered protagonists, moralizing lectures, a villainous conspiracy, and the heroine's blood used for a vaccine to cure the populace, many of which should sound familiar to anyone on this wiki, that Chris would find it enjoyable is unsurprising. So, that's really all there is to say, and I suppose the way we could actually, like, close this out is by checking out the Chris Chan show. So here it is, I suppose. I had no other way of looking into this. 2010 this was. God damn. Did it get renewed for a second series?
This message is to Mr. Mao of the Goddamn Studio. Your ad right now. What you have up there on my Wikipedia, that's just wrong. You're imitating Jack Thaddeus now, and I do not appreciate it. Either you remove your ads altogether, or I will have your head off. I've already had...
Okay, laughing track, that's it, I'm done already. Okay, you know what? I'm just gonna, like, call it snobbish, ladies and gentlemen, call it what you will, but there's absolutely no way I'm actually going to even get into shows with, like, laughing tracks. At least not American ones, at any rate. So, the only thing I want to say right now, ladies and gentlemen, is that this is probably one of the most, maybe more malleable wiki articles we've done so far, because on one hand, I'm willing to say that it's not so much that Chris's tastes are one-sided and they're just kind of poor, because that's not particularly a very fair sentiment. He knows what he likes and he will stick to it. While occasionally he wants to, like, branch out and try new things, and that's absolutely fine. There's nothing really wrong with that. But one thing you could automatically suggest to this, ladies and gentlemen, is that the problem is that the media he consumes, he only ever puts into his comics if there were just things he could just straight up steal, from characters to plots to... Well, with the thing with Brand New Animal, that might be the only exception to the rule where maybe art is imitating life. Or life imitating art, or something like that. I'm not entirely sure. But again, I can't really be, like, too mean to Chris about this. Not because I think my tastes are different or better. Well, they're certainly different. Listen, I like Monty Python and all that, but... there are plenty of other comedies out there as well, and I like horror films as well, but, you know, there are lots of other ones outside of the Saw franchise, and, well, what else can I say? I think I don't really feel like I've got anything else to say, so that's just that. So, I hope that every one of you have enjoyed this article on Chris and television. It's just kind of a little bit what this was. It's just not really too much else to say, really, apart from he watches some anime and watches Monty Python and then watches a lot of Seth MacFarlane material. And with all that being said and done, I hope to see all of you guys again in the next video. Take care, and bye-bye for now.